some questions. Yes. Meike, you had some questions. That's
I
great.
did. Although I feel a bit awkward now because only this morning we had the clinical training with Zina, and she has just focused on all the most important questions that I had were about how can we distinguish the level of action tendencies in our patients, and how can we create a situation that helps the patient developing an action that is just one step higher in the action cluster hierarchy.
Yes.
And, well, that was exactly what we did this morning. So I feel a bit, well, I don't know. Well, a part of my questions are answered, but perhaps you can sort of add, well, something to it to inspire us a little more.
I wasn't present. I couldn't be present as I did not hear what Sina gave for answers. You mentioned that your questions were responded to at least in part, because it was already a great help. Thank you, Sina, for that. In what regard, perhaps, are there still some question marks?
Well, I suppose we didn't really talk about it, but more like in an experiential way, sort of, try to figure out how to use the phenomenological signs of the patient and being aware of our own longings.
Yes.
And then trying to, most of the time wait and not be too eager. And in a very slow pace, help the patient to stay in their own inner world and their own effective state, really.
Well, yes, sometimes in a slow way, sometimes in a very slow way, sometimes in a moderate pace, and sometimes in a fast pace. It just depends on how much room for development there is, how much eagerness there is, how much longing there is to develop, how much courage there is, how good the relationship is in the therapy room. Compare it to working with a child. As a parent, how do you do that with your children? I happen to know that you're a mother. Let's consult that frame of reference. How do we, as a parent, sort of estimate where our child is? Because, as I just said in the German version, you don't sort of invite a baby to start and walk. No. Because you intuitively almost feel that that would be complete nonsense. But how do you know? How do you know what is within the vicinity of development for your child?
Well, you try to you sense what the signals that they give you, and sometimes, I mean, you won't expect a baby to walk, but my children are a little bit
how do you know that?
Older, and
how do you know that? How do you know that it is silly to expect a baby to walk? How do you know that?
Well, sometimes you do expect something that they obviously can't, and they show you that they can't. They get distressed, or they refuse, or they get angry, or they fail, or something happens that gives you the feedback that it's not, you're not at the same level.
Okay, you already indicated it, but what does the feedback consist of? Say you over-demand a baby, a young child. What sort of feedback do you get?
Oh, protest, affect.
Protests, yes.
Yeah.
And what form does the protest take? In a child that still has no words, still lacks words, or has only few words, how does the
They
young
show it in their
child?
body. They show
Okay.
it with tension or in the muscles or in the
Yes.
face, facial expression.
And when does the tension come? Exactly, as to timing. Here you are with your child, and the child is giving you signals of satisfaction. I'm content with this situation, and the child is smiling, is engaging with you more or less, or is playing. And then here comes mommy, and mommy expects something. The power of action in the baby should increase. Good. Mommy starts to do something. Good. What sort of signals do you get?
I try to think back, but I mean, my children are 13 and 16 years old, so their protest has a different form
Absolutely.
at this point.
That's in any case an important thing.
But something changes in the relationship.
Okay, that's an abstract formulation, and of course you're completely right. But I want to go the enacted way and say that the signals, a signal is a signal if you take something to be a signal. That there are some things that we are sensitive to. As that would be, for example, the expression in the eyes. Is there joy in the eyes? Is there interest in the eyes? Is there fear in the eyes? Is there anger in the eyes? And is there frowning in this part of the skull? What does the mouth do? What sort of movements do you see? And the cheek and the whole expression. And then what do the hands do? What do the shoulders do? Is it this or is it that? Does every movement in the face, in the body, can be a signal, if we take it to be a signal. And we take it to be a signal when something happens. I ask the child to do this or that, or I invited the child to play, and the reaction I got in the child is that. That wasn't there before, now it's there. Does you track your timing? I did such and so, and the child in a dance with me is giving me particular signs that we can take as communication. And it is all the more communication in as much as it becomes apparent that the child has an intention to tell us, to show us something. Just as we have an intention, a will, a longing to communicate with the child. If there are two players and they both have the intention to give each other signals, then we have communication. Good. In as much as there is communication, there's already something positive. There's the intention to communicate, to achieve something together. There's participatory sense making. It may also be that you wish to communicate something, but that the child goes in defense and shows, I don't want to be part of this. That then you get the sort of signals that we tend to interpret as a defensive reaction. Mommy wanted a bit too much. And mommy's voice becomes less strict. Shall we do this? And the child, oh, that was a bit too much. No. And you change your tone of voice so that you, in a way, in that sense, dance with your child and you seek the sort of equilibrium that is supposed to be there in order to be together in communication with one another. With the patient, it's the same thing. You propose to do something and you get a defensive reaction. In the eyes, in the face, in the whole body, in the hands, in the feet, whatever. In the direction of the gaze, the tone of voice, the rhythm of speaking, the fragmentation in the voice. Yes, yeah, that shows that there is trouble on the way. we should pick up all those signals. And when we get the signals, or that which we interpret as a signal, which we take to be a signal, we should feel, what is it that I want? And how does it now feel? I wanted to invite the child to play together, but what I get is a different type of thing than, yeah, that would be lovely, mommy. I get a different thing, without words, with all nonverbals, with all paralinguistics, all prosody. And then you need to feel, as the therapist, as the mother, as a parent, as the other, what is my longing? But I want to play. Mommy wants to play. Mommy is in a good mood and she wants to play with the baby. But the baby is tired and wants just to have the breast and that's it. Or wants to sleep or wants to be with herself. If then you feel that you want to play and the child doesn't want to play, and if you then wouldn't be sufficiently sensitive to your own longing, that your longing becomes too dominant, that's asking for trouble, and you get stronger defensive signals in your child. Then you need to feel that as the mother and also as the therapist. Now, I want change in this session, and my patient doesn't, because she's too scared, she's too tired, she is too this or too that. Whatever it may be, there is no longing to change at this point. Or there is some longing to change, but it seems that the patient feels overwhelmed by what it is that I want, I propose. I go too fast. Or, for that matter, not again that. You've told me that 3 times, I do understand that now. I want to move on now. Or, I want to address these horrible memories. And yes, they come with a whole lot of pain and fear and anger and whatever. And you, therapist, you seem to be afraid of my intensity of affectivity. Thus, as I go there, I see fear in the therapist. And that makes me feel kind of uncertain. It is as if I'm not doing the right thing as the patient. I'm just inventing little stories, as you understand, just to pinpoint how we can find the type of relationship that can be productive. What is it that I want? What is it that the other person wants or the other part wants? What sort of things are happening here in the room that I can interpret to be signals of cooperation or antagonism or confusion or fear or other defenses? What do we have in the room? Then we need to assess, in as much as we feel there is a longing to change, what change is within reach? Am I asking too little so that it's dull? Or am I asking too much so that my intervention is too much of a challenge? And here the metaphor of dancing can be used. If you dance with a person, you don't need to hear the words saying, the moves that you want to make are too complex for me. Because if you hold the other person's body, if you hold the other person, you feel it. If you're sufficiently sensitive. Now, some dancing partners are not sensitive enough and they do weird things and they fall and stumble together. This should be our art as the therapist, to feel what works and on the basis of interest. And in that frame, we should really be sensing, hearing, seeing, feeling. What happens in the other person's domain, what happens in my domain, and what happens in our conjoined domain. What happens between us? What do we do together? If You then propose an intervention. You feel there is a wish to change in the patient and in the therapist together. They want the same thing. If you then see disturbance in the patient's face, then you check. And as I propose to this or to do this or that, I notice that your face turns a little darker. Did I see that correctly? Yeah. What was happening? Oh, such and so. It's good that you showed that there was a degree of hesitation and yet you are kind of scared to take that step. Okay. Is it too scary? Should we go for a simpler thing to do? Or would you like to continue? No, I want to continue. Okay, continue, and I stay with you. What do you experience as you try to speak to the aggressive voice, to the strong voice? What happens to you? Such and so. What happens to the strong voice? Such and so. Are you starting to talk to one another? No, not really. Okay. What do you feel would the strong voice want to hear from you more? Well, she thinks I'm a sissy. That's what she thinks. She wants to see more power in you. Can you feel that that is what she is longing for? That the strong voice wants to actually invite you to show more strength. How could you do that? Etc., etc., etc. There is no abstract way of saying what exactly it is that can be done in a session. You must feel it. And these words that I'm uttering are actually kind of invitations to be very present at a very tangible, palpable, concrete way, and not in the abstract way. And why do I say that? Generally, when we do role plays in training situations, and if the role play doesn't flow that well, then I see therapists turning their eyes up and they look for the magic solution or for an answer to the question, what must I do? And they start to think. Whereas generally it is more productive to feel more and to put that in words. As I proposed to do this or that, I saw that your face grew concerned, I would say. What do I mean by that? Concerned? Well, you start to frown. I say it again and feel that's what you do. When I say such and so, then you start to frown. Now, you may want to tell me what's the good reason that you start to frown. Well, that and that is happening. That in that very tangible, direct way, we look for the level of the action tendencies and not in an abstract way. If you then get a sort of reaction that tells you that the patient is too scared, then I would go for, and if you'd now be the patient, you just take on a role, I would say, your face grew a little dark and there seemed to be, your muscles were telling me sort of, wow, that's a lot. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Yeah.
I thought it was a bit much, really.
It wasn't that much. Okay, good. I think it's important that I noticed that it was a bit much. You showed me, actually. It was a bit too much. What would make it a bit simpler?
No, yes, but well, perhaps. Well, I just don't want to take. I don't want to feel all of it at once, really.
Feeling all that stuff at once is simply too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. How important, how good that you told me that with your whole being here in the room. Because certainly we should not want to do more than you can do I should not expect you to do more than you are willing and able to do. It's so important that you told me that. So, Ella, that was too much.
Mm. I would say it is important that we sort of well, keep our speed up a little, because I really want to get better, right? So
And that too, right? Feel that longing. You want to get better, you want to make advancements,
yeah.
and it shouldn't go too fast.
Well, yeah, but I just hate myself for not wanting to go fast.
Ah, why is that? Why would you want to demand more of you than you can possibly do?
Hmm. I think I always have done. I don't know. I think there wouldn't, well, I don't think I would have been here otherwise. I just think we have to sort of well, keep going or something.
Yeah,
I just
sure.
I just can't sort of really stay at my own pace. I mean, I just would sort of lie on the couch and not go anywhere. I just
Oh. If you were all alone by yourself, your pace would be not so fast. You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't start to do things.
if I was the only person in the world, perhaps.
Yes, perhaps then, yes.
Yeah, but I mean that is not a realistic
Mm.
thought, is it?
Feel those two things. You want to advance and you want to go faster than you sometimes can. And then if you can't go that fast as you would want to, then you're kind of dissatisfied with yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm. It's
And
actually quite an art to expect from ourselves that which we can do, and also to sense where our boundaries are, what we can and cannot do.
well, as you say that, something is shifting inside, and I think, well, I will show you that I know I can do it. I can do more than people expect of me. I am strong. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that should not be underestimated.
No. And
You are strong.
that's
How
what I
would you
was
want to
trying to
use
say.
that strength? Feel that strength. Feel it in your whole being. I'm strong. I can do things. I want to advance.
Yeah.
Yes. And also listen to the pace that everything about you can engage in.
You mean the thing of wanting to lie on the couch, or
Well, if that's what it is,
no, I don't want that.
you want it and you don't want it. That's
Mm.
interesting, right?
I
Yes.
want this. I want this. I favor the strong part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You want to be strong and you want to move ahead. And as you go for it, and sometimes there's also that darker face that I just saw.
Mm.
Shall we take the two on board and appreciate both? It's super good to want to advance. It's super good to feel I can do that.
Yeah.
I want to and I can. Where would we be without that?
Mm.
Good.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Super good. And then there's also something about us. Yeah, I can and I want, but it's also a bit scary. Or there's something about me that sort of tells a different story. You know how that works with me. Can I give a personal example?
Yeah.
I find it sometimes hard to close the day. And I have the feeling I could have done more this day. And everyone sees that Ellert is exhausted, that it is simply a not so clever thing to do. But then he gets into bed, he takes a book, and he happens to like sometimes books that are not so simple. He experiences that as a kind of challenge out of interest. And then he reads a page, no, not even a page, because before the page is finished, he falls asleep. And thank God I fall asleep so that I'm fresh in the morning, because actually my clearer moments are early in the morning and in the course of the morning. Throughout the day, I tend to get a bit tired, in the afternoon a bit sleepy, and then Ellert is stupid and he continues reading. But he doesn't pick up anything. It's simply a waste of time. And his wife tells him, why don't you sleep for half an hour? And then he does it. I feel better and I can pick up the text better. Next day, he continues reading the book despite his fatigue. That's me, a little crazy. I guess in Ellert there could be more balance between I want to learn something more, understand something more, have fun in studying something, and taking a break and feeling when the time is right to move forward and when the time is right to take a rest. Could you appreciate your longing to go forward and at the same time to go forward in a particular pace that is within reach?
I found that a really sad story, to be honest.
What was so sad about the story?
Well, I feel strong in the morning.
Yes.
But I stay up too late, reading and working and doing things, all kinds
Like
of
me.
perhaps a little bit.
And perhaps a little bit. Yeah, it's a bit sad. You know, what I find sad in myself is that I repeat the thing. I would want to, if there's something I would want to learn to move ahead, it would be to bring the two together a bit more. So that the one who wants to advance can advance when there's energy and when there is courage to take a step. And that the other one can also be part of the game by feeling, now I'm too tired, or that step, that is a step, a bridge too far yet. I'd like to not repeat the thing. How about you?
You're hopeless.
How's that?
Well, I feel a little bit seduced into something that might be best, but
You do the things you want to do. It's up to you.
I don't know.
Okay, you take your time. At this moment, you don't know. And then, as I'm saying that, I see two faces. The eager face and the somewhat darker face. Now perhaps the two can sort of talk to one another and feel free in doing that and coming up with their own kind of solution. Should we start addressing those very painful memories at the level almost of 100%? Every bad thing there was. Or shall we sort of feel if 50%, half of it, would suffice for today, or perhaps a bit more or even less?
I don't think I've experienced that kind of choice before. Not really.
Really?
It's either I do all of it or none at all.
And then if you say this, and if a colleague of mine by the name of Meike would hear this, then I would tell Meike, here you see the all or nothing regulation, which is a lower level of action tendency, than having the ability to start appreciating a degree of relativity and of proportion. The child wants all or nothing. The baby, either she sleeps, she drinks, or she has fun with mommy. It's either or. And at a certain point, we need to learn to distribute energy a bit more. And we need to learn to wait instead of to do it all at once and stumble and fall. Because in this sort of longer exchange, Meike, that we had, thank you for that. What I was trying to sort of model is the looking for a balance. And you nicely played the role of a tough one that wants to proceed and doesn't want to hear anything about lying on the couch, because that's an awful image. And we fooled around a little bit, and I could give a personal example, which happens to be very true. I still make the same mistake.
So do I.
Always. Sometimes I start to become a little bit more clever, but usually I step into the same mistake because I have no time, I need to proceed. There's a lot to do, and then falling asleep, etc., etc. Because I tried to dance with you, to relate to you, to find out of the blue here, get some conversation going between us. And then you said, I feel kind of seduced. And that was another signal for me. Alert, the patient feels seduced. That's not the idea. And it's a defense because she says that I seduce her because she doesn't want to have any business with the other one that wants to rest, which she labels as bad. Good. Because then we were sort of in a discourse together, moving back and forth, trying to find where you are, what it is that you want, an idea that is conceivable to you, and slowly an idea, it's a bit much, all or nothing. And then indeed, can we introduce a degree of relativity and then go for an action which is not all or nothing.
So the experience, like the sensing of, well, your own longings and that of the patient is more important, as you say, than sort of relying on models of, well, steps that might be taken.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you for putting it that way. Yes, indeed, in the inactive approach, yes, of course, we have certain models that we follow, certain general ideas, certain hypotheses. And then there is pragmatism, real life, direct interaction. And in direct interacting, in feeling ourselves, feeling our own bodies, feeling our own longings related to our bodies and the things that we would do, perhaps. Feel it and feel the other. Be present at the level of direct feeling, much more than thinking. if we start to think in terms of models, what intervention should I do now? Then you're in a way too distant. You're in your head, you're not in the present situation very much, and thereby you miss what the kind of signals actually that the patient is giving, and that the signals that you are giving yourself. Because in that sense, it is really, I love that metaphor of dancing. In dancing, you cannot think, you can only act. As you ride a car, a bicycle, if you speak a sentence, you cannot think about the sentence in most cases. You simply try and find the words. And that is part of the enactive approach. Very pragmatic, very sensory, very motor, very affect-laden. Very much centered, at least in my take on the enactive approach, in longing. And I'm aware that I put that up front, I think, stronger than anyone else. Because everything flows from longing. And I feel that that in psychology is absolutely insufficiently appreciated. And that's why I have that phrase, longing and striving. The striving is that which we do. And doing includes the mental actions, so to speak. That's the striving. And I time and again revert to the longing that drives it all, which is the center of it all. Because what are you want to advance and you don't want to stay put on the couch. Well, that's clearly what you want, and that's what drove you all the time. What didn't drive you enough is the second longing to take a break and not to take time and again steps that are a bridge too far so that you fail. And you try to get the two longings together to compromise rather than to conflict with one another. And then the striving can be different. But if the longing isn't at the same plane, or at least in sufficient touch with one another, the one and the other, it's a struggle. And then the solution is not at the level of a more clever intervention. It's the focus on, I repeat myself, the longing. And we must be
quite a relief, actually.
Sorry?
I find that quite a relief as I hear you say that, because I was trained as a Gestalt therapist first.
Yes.
And afterwards, there were all these methods and things that I've been taught as a clinical psychologist, and they tend to confuse me time and again. Like I asked the question about the polyvagal theory.
Yeah.
And I attended this workshop, and I was I had my hopes up high, and I thought, oh, I'm really interested, and then I was so disappointed afterwards, because all they showed were these brilliant slides with nice colors and figures and models and drawings and things, and but in reaching out to the patient, there was just the model more important than the signals that the patients were sending out. And it keeps sort of confusing me or disappointing me, really. And but hearing you speak sort of brings back a sort of relief that
you're not a good mother because you read a book.
Is enough. We don't have to learn more.
You're not but you don't. You are not the fine mother you are because you read a book and you follow the model.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of thing you follow is your intuition, is your good perception, your good sensing of the other person and what you do together. And therapy is primarily that. And I fully agree with you that in those therapies that are very strong model guided and protocol guided, that they confuse you, because I should go by the book. And in as much as the book tells you what to do, that can be fine. But then real life is not a book. It's not the model itself. And Uta, I'm really inclined to ask you here to tell us a little bit about what you told me about training in Germany and what happens to therapists. Also in training with us, when they feel that they have to follow models and they really don't work. You can put it better than I can. Can you share some thoughts if you want, please?
My experience is, as teacher, that they followed their models, their inner models. And when when I'm coming up with the inactive approach, they are neugierig.
Curious?
Curious, yes, of course, but also a little bit stressed because they lost their
fixed models.
They're fixed models.
Yes. Yeah.
They are between curiosity and a little bit stressed, like this. And so I put it so that I begin with, yes, you have the model and so and so and so and so. And now we go some steps further.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you say this, Uta and everyone here present, I'm reminded of learning how to bake a cake.
Yes.
My mother-in-law was fantastic at that.
Yeah.
And Elliot had a great interest in learning how to bake cakes for his children. He had to learn that. And thus he was asking for recipes. Mommy, how do you do that? Well, she said, you just take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I said, yes, but how many grams of sugar?
Yes.
How many eggs? How this and that? Well, you sort of assess the situation. She said it more or less like that. I felt completely frustrated. But she taught me just to go for it and to find a little bit with stumbling and falling and getting in your feet again, to be led by the thing in your hands
Yes.
as it evolves. And I do think absolutely that it makes sense to have solid theories. I do think it has a value to have models. I do think it's good to have in mind and having trained the sort of things we can do. However, what modern psychotherapy has completely forgotten, at least when I hear about how younger colleagues are trained these days, is the art of psychotherapy, the art of being with another person, like being a good mother, being a good friend. Here another example. I was struggling with a female colleague that I thought is simply a good therapist. We started to do a role play, and everything she did was not a little bit wrong as I proceeded. It made no sense at all. And I was struggling to help her move a little step forward and trying to get some empathy into her voice as she was speaking to the part of the patients, and a little bit more this and a little bit more that. And in short of despair in the end, I said, would you talk like this to your friend? No. Then act as if the patient is your friend. Talk to her. She's a person you care for, you like to spend time with. Well, then I would do this and that, and it was there. Okay, from now on, meet your patients more or less as if they were like your good friend. And that's a sort of difference.
Yes.
We get into a cramp, we go in third person perspective.
Yep.
What must I do? What tells, how should I understand this?
Mhm.
And it is like driving a racing car and reading the manual. As I repeat, of course, there is a great interest in practicing skills, in getting ideas, getting an understanding.
Mhm.
But if that understanding goes at a level of rather pure cognition, at a level of pure behavior, at a level of
What's right and wrong.
yes, right and wrong,
Yes. Mhm.
then the whole thing goes awry.
Yes.
Or where, as you said, Meike, the model becomes more important than reality.
Mhm.
There's in philosophy a nice saying: if you, with the help of concepts, have managed to get a little higher, at a higher level, then forget about the tools that brought you there. To put it in tangible terms, if you are one story higher, throw away the ladder. Enjoy being at a higher level, but don't be concerned with the ladder.
Mhm.
And our tools, our theories, they are like ladders. They are supposed to help us a little bit, but they should not substitute for direct living a therapeutic situation
Mhm.
in which we are very much a part as a living, longing being ourselves. We are not instruments.
Mhm.
We are living beings to the one we call therapist, the other we call patient, or we use different words.
Mhm.
We're not the same in every regard, but we are the same in humanity, in and the longing to be with one another and to achieve something together.
Mhm.
And that, in a way, implies a whole lot of affect, a whole lot of feeling,
Yeah.
guided by longing.
Mhm.
And these days, therapists are not trained anymore to feel their own longing in an embodied, world-embedded sense.
Mhm.
It becomes technique. And then we come up in psychology with terms like information,
Mhm.
information processing, mental representations, and all those technical terms that, if you analyze them, are problematic anyway, and they are very problematic. But apart from that, it doesn't help to do something of use in a concrete, tangible situation with the patient. Thus, I would say, yes, have your models, have your hypotheses, but also very strongly have your feeling aboard. Your capacity to be with another person, simply to be there together. Sometimes I ask my patients why they sometimes told me more than they had in a few sessions than they had ever told in longer lasting therapies before. What do I do differently? And they say, well, in a way, you are so normal. And they mean by that so common. You may want to check the dialogues I'm having. I presented in the Trinity of Trauma in the Blue Book. Read the text, see how simple most of the language is that is being used, at least that I'm using. Brief sentences, simple, direct, concrete, tangible language. Now, it wasn't always like that, but I actually was trained by my patients because they told me by giving signals, not in words, but by giving signals, that my abstract psychoeducation was not making any sense at all. In the end, the only thing that happened in the session was that I heard myself speak.
Mhm.
I was the only one speaking because the patient was bored, disinterested, confused. I wasn't dancing.
Mm.
Because I evermore, I think, throughout my career, started to forget about the things, had them in the background.
Mm.
And I evermore started to experience that I was a tool. I was an instrument in the sense as when you have a guitar or the cello and there is, what's the English word for it? The sound box
Mhm.
where we resonate.
A resonance box. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, the resonance box. Yes, the
Mm.
resonance box doesn't understand,
Yes.
but it's perfect in resonating with the moves and the strings.
Yes.
And that quality
Mhm.
I'm now focusing on.
Mhm.
Good. Meike, returning to you. Have I said something that is of some use?
Definitely. Yeah. I
Yes.
feel relieved.
Okay. Are more people present here a bit relieved in the way that Meike is, or in a similar way? If you are, you can mention it. Open your mic and tell us.
I've nothing really to add, but I can just say I'm also again and again relieved when I hear it, and it fits to my own feelings and impressions, and also to what I observe when I teach. So yeah, I can just confirm.
Yes. And I heard the word liberating today. Meike, you said it. I recognized that word. It was a liberation for me too, as a therapist. When I started to say things like, as you say this, I feel that and that. I feel moved. I feel confused. Actually, I feel a little bit irritated when you say it like that. Can I be that honest with you? That's opening up. Of course, trying to estimate when you say something like that and for what purpose. It should not be a thing in itself, but it is about meeting the other person as a real other person, not as a technician, not as the therapist, but as a second human being that is sitting with another person who has simply had a very difficult life. And there we are together, trying to be of use to one another. Good. Perhaps that could conclude our session for today. Would that be okay with you? Anything, anyone?
Unless
present
someone
here?
still has a question, we have 7 minutes,
We have 7 minutes. Okay.
which allows Ella to answer 1/10 of an answer.
Anyone else with a question?
No. Then for us Europeans, we can start the weekend. I hope for you.
Good. Then
Yeah.
I wish that you have a beautiful weekend with a lot of intuition and a lot of feeling what it is that you long for, and a wonderful time in which those longings are fulfilled in sufficient degree so that you start on Monday morning fresh, refreshed, and meet the patients as the human beings that you are.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye. Have a nice
Lucas.
weekend.
Lucas says bye-bye.
Bye bye, everyone.